Good day, it's JJ MMA. Today we are going to be doing a best to worst chins tier list. Just to explain to you a little bit what each tier means, the S tier is you have a very good chin, granite chin, you can barely be knocked down. Maybe you've never been knocked down, maybe you've never been wobbled. One guy in the S tier has been wobbled, but we'll talk about that. But nonetheless, you take those type of shots in the chin, and you have that granite of a chin. That'll earn you the S tier ranking. The A tier is, you have a good chin. Maybe we've seen you be wobbled before, but you have a good chin. Maybe your chin hasn't been that proven yet, but you've probably never been knocked out before. Maybe been knocked out once, maybe on the regional scene, maybe by a very good opponent, anything like that. The B tier is basically you have a mid chin. I'm not worried about you being put out cold when you fight, but there's definitely that thought given the right dance partner, given the right opponent. The C tier it's not quite you're cooked, but it's your chin's very questionable. I'm worried for you when you fight. And then the D tier is basically you're cooked if a gust of wind blows past your chin. And yeah, let's get into it. Starting off with the first fighter we have in this tier list, we're going to put him in the B tier. Curtis Blaydes. Now, when he fought Josh Hokett recently, Josh Hokett's a guy who weighs 30 pounds less than him, and Hokett hit him on the chin, and I know Hokett has very good pound-for-pound power. However, he did get stumbled, and he nearly got dropped, but he kept himself up. He got wobbled on several occasions in the fight. I know Hokett might have got wobbled too, but that was mostly because he was kind of playing around, throwing an act. He never really got wobbled. He did get hurt once, but other than that, Blaydes was taking the worst of it. Blaydes got put out by an Ngannou, no shame in that. Ngannou's obviously got the best power we've ever seen in UFC history, pound for pound. Maybe Ilya pound for pound, but other than that, I'd say Ngannou. We've seen Blaydes get put out before. We've seen him, I believe Pavlovich knocked him out. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, Blaydes can be put out. His chin is mid. I'm not worried for him when he fights necessarily. I think he does a really good job protecting himself. He has decent striking defense, decent striking offense. He'll usually blend in his game with the wrestling. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Blaydes when he fights, but he definitely does have that he can be chinny at times. I'll just say that. Given the amount of if he gets past the first round and he's past all the danger of a fresh opponent, I think that he survives the fight, and he typically does. So, there you go. Yeah, he survived Hokett after getting wobbled twice or three times. So, yeah, there you go. That's my ranking for Blaydes. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put in the tier list. We're going to put him in the A slot. Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen, yeah, Arnold Allen's a warrior. I don't believe he's ever been finished before. We've had a guy like Gene Silva. He's kind of, I don't even think Gene Silva wobbled him, and that's very impressive because Gene Silva's a guy that has a lot of mustard in his hands. Gene Silva does have the one-hitter quitter type power at featherweight, and he has very good pound-for-pound power. It's hard to tank shots from a guy like Gene Silva. And Arnold Allen did that. He took shots. I know Max Holloway at featherweight was a volume striker, but he still took a lot on the chin from Max Holloway. Arnold Allen's been in wars over the years, and his chin hasn't deteriorated one bit. So, Arnold Allen, he has a very good chin. I wouldn't say granite chin. I wouldn't say S tier because, maybe another round with Gene Silva, the way that it was going, Gene Silva wasn't really tiring out. Maybe he could have got wobbled by Gene Silva. Given Kevin Vallejos, I do think Kevin Vallejos can put it on Arnold Allen, volume strike, and eventually chin him, kind of like Ilya did to Max at featherweight. Arnold Allen has a really good chin. We'll put him in the A tier. We move on. Now, this is another guy that we're going to put in the B tier, Justin Rufus Gaethje. Now, We've seen Patty. His chin kind of looked questionable against Patty. I do think that he got wobbled, and I think it was either round 3 or round 4. He got wobbled by Patty in the first. Patty was landing some on his chin. I was getting a little bit worried for Rufus here. The way he ducks his head really concerns me. I think Ilya is going to expose that at the White House. obviously Holloway put him out. Holloway dropped him a few times, and Holloway's obviously a lighter man skill, a lightweight. So, I mean, yeah, he's obviously Holloway's coming up from featherweight, and he had the wars at featherweight. Rufus was getting the sauce put on him by Holloway, and Oliveira dropped him. I mean, there's no shame of getting dropped by Oliveira or Holloway because those guys have mustard in their hands. I know Holloway's not necessarily known as the power guy, but those are two good strikers. Oliveira is a very good striker. He's got very underrated pound for pound power. He cracked Max on the chin. People forget, man. But yeah, there's that. That's my ranking for Rufus at the moment. He used to have a very good chin, and then the wars with Dustin. And I know the second fight wasn't really a war, but they were trading in round one. It was looking to be a war until Rufus put him out with the head kick. But I mean, yeah, that's my ranking for Justin Rufus Gaethje. We move on. This is a guy that has a completely cooked chin, probably the worst chin in the UFC right now. Bro, Johnny Walker. I mean, there's a reason. Hold on. There's a reason that this guy at UFC 327 was just standing at range like this with Dominic Reyes. There's a reason that he was doing that. It's because he didn't want. It's because this guy didn't want to be chinned. He knows that he's chinny. 2 weeks before the fight, I think some source said that he got put out cold by a heavyweight. Maybe not put out cold, but definitely knocked down by a heavyweight that he was sparring with. And the reality is the heavyweight was probably going light. He was probably going light with Johnny Walker. We've seen Johnny Walker in the octagon get put out by the likes of Ankalaev. No shame in that because Ankalaev's a good counter striker. He wobbled Pereira. He's been put out by Jamal Hill. He's been put out by, Johnny Walker's been put out by a lot of people, and there's a reason that he was avoiding combat at all costs with Dominic Reyes. It's because he didn't want to get chinned. He didn't want to get the counter punch two up the middle that Reyes did on Krylov. From Reyes, both guys are very chinny, so there's a reason that they were kind of just standing at distance. Walker was trying to just throw the leg kicks. It's because Johnny Walker is very chinny. I mean, the way that he got put out, starched out cold by Jamal Hill. This was pre-ACL tear Jamal Hill, so this is a different Jamal Hill. But Jamal Hill had him literally the definition of palms up. Like literally Golden Freddy style, palms up against the cage. The way that Jamal Hill knocked him out, and Johnny Walker just folded over, and then his body just sprung up, and he fell down, palms up against the cage. But yeah, Johnny Walker's chin is horrible. Probably the worst in the UFC, one of the worst all time. We move on. I think Johnny Walker has like 5 KO losses, something like that in the UFC. But yeah, we move on. C tier, Charles do Bronx Oliveira. He's been pretty chinny throughout his career. The good thing about him is that when he gets chinned or when he gets dropped, he's only been chinned out cold once, and that was by Ilya, who has, obviously like top 5 probably pound for pound power in UFC history. We might make a video on that one if you guys want. Just let me know in the comments down below. But top pound for pound power in UFC history. But anyways, we're talking about this video right now. And Charlie Olives, he gets dropped a lot in his fights, but the opponents that he gets dropped by, Justin Rufus Gaethje, a lot of power there. People say Justin Rufus Gaethje, he hits so hard. And Khabib said that he's never been hit harder than Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje hitting him, dropping him. Chandler dropping you kind of has me scared for your chin. In the second fight with Chandler, there were some moments. I know Chandler was hitting the back of the head, but at the same time, Chandler was kind of putting it on Oliveira on the feet for moments until Oliveira started to use his range with the Muay Thai and the teeps, and then the obviously the grappling that he was backpacking Michael Chandler, and then in the second fight, obviously, and then. Dustin Poirier dropping you, that's not bad. Dustin Poirier has a lot of power, good boxing. Obviously getting knocked out cold by Ilya. I was worried for Charles on the feet with Gamrot. So, when Gamrot was kind of touching Charles's chin, I was getting worried for Charles. So, Charles, he's not as chinny as people like to think he is. Because you look at the levels of the opponents that he's faced, that he's been dropped by, that he's been chinned by a little bit, and it's not bad. And the way that he recovers, he's not D tier obviously, so the recovery time on Charles makes him a high C tier. Obviously the tiers, I forgot to mention this, the tiers are not based on ranking, but yeah, he's a high C tier if I were to rank these guys. But anyways, we move on to the next one. This guy I'm going to put in the C tier with Charles, and that's Alex Pereira. And you guys might be shocked by this one, but I think that he does have a worse chin than Charles. Because, Alex Pereira, he doesn't get hit clean on the chin very much because, he's very unorthodox with his offensive striking. Obviously, he doesn't turn over his leg kicks, doesn't turn his hips with them. You'll never hear Joe Rogan stop talking about them. People forget, man. No, he doesn't pull out the people forget, man, for Alex Pereira. How did he ever make it down to 185? That calf is already busted up. So, anyways, my point is, Pereira doesn't get hit clean very much, so we never really get to see his chin tested, except for the times when he does get hit clean. Against Roundtree in the first few rounds, Roundtree was starting to hit him clean. But as we've heard after the Yuri fight, and I don't want to talk about it, but Khalil Roundtree doesn't turn over his punches, so that takes away a lot of the power from the punches. But even then, Alex was kind of getting affected by the left hooks and the right hooks that Roundtree was throwing at him when they were landing clean on him. Ankalaev wobbled him, and I know this was an injured Pereira, but Ankalaev did wobble him in round one pretty badly, and then Pereira got saved by the bell. Obviously, Adesanya put him out with strikes that weren't honestly that powerful. You look back at the strikes, Adesanya was kind of putting a weird angle into it, and he kind of just touched Pereira on the chin with that left hook that put him out. I don't know if it was a left uppercut, left hook. It was kind of in the middle of the two, but, it did put Pereira out cold. That's the worst we've seen Pereira put out before. And I don't know how his glory kickboxing career was, but I'm sure that he's taken a lot of damage cumulative over that time. And that's my ranking for Pereira. I do think that he's somewhat chinny, but we haven't really seen it been tested yet. We'll move on. The next guy, this is our first S tier, and I know there are still a lot of people that talk about this guy as a granite chin, but he does still have a very underrated chin, and I think it's one of the best in the UFC, if not the best in the UFC, pound for pound. Alexandre Pantoja. We are getting the belt back. Joshua Van is a paper champ. Tatsuro Tai will be a paper champ. Pantoja, he has a granite chin. Guys like Steve Erceg, who have some decent power pound for pound. Pantoja was tanking those shots. Pantoja was tanking the shots of Kai Kara France, Brandon Moreno for 5 rounds. We obviously know Brandon Moreno has very good slick boxing, good Muay Thai. So, Pantoja's, he's shown a very impressive display of chin over his years in the UFC. He beat Manel Kape. Manel Kape has crazy power for flyweight. If we mentioned that in one of our videos, it's the top 20 pound for pound rankings video. Go check that one out. It's out on the channel. It's been out for a few days. Pantoja has a crazy chin, and a chin that many people don't give him credit for. Pantoja, I stand by this. Pantoja is one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC, even though he is top 10 pound for pound. I think he's higher than the UFC has in pound for pound. And he's very, very, very good. And one of the most underrated aspects of his game is also his chin. So, Pantoja has a very granite chin. We'll move on to the next one. And the next one is going to be in the A tier. Another very good chin. A very famously good chin. A lot of people say that this guy has the best chin in UFC history. I don't necessarily agree with that, even though he has taken good shots on the chin in wars. But now his chin, this is a current ranking, and that's why Justin Rufus Gaethje isn't higher. And now we're starting to see his chin deteriorate a little bit, and we're talking about Max Holloway. Now, before actually not the third Dustin Poirier fight, before the Gaethje fight, we never really got to see Max Holloway dropped. He's been wobbled by Poirier in the second fight, but other than that, he never really got wobbled. I know Volk kind of put some on him on the feet, but he never really got wobbled except for that one time against Poirier up a weight class on short notice, I believe. And yeah, once it got to the Gaethje fight, he was dominating him for 3 rounds, and then Rufus dropped him round 4. Big moment from Gaethje there, and then we obviously know what happened in the last second. Max Holloway, craziest knockout in UFC history. Then his next fight, he gets chinned cold by Topuria, and there's no shame in getting knocked out cold by Topuria, and he did take Topuria to 3 rounds and did eat some good shots on the chin before that from Topuria. So, this guy, he had a granite chin. I believe that it's not severely, but it's deteriorating now for sure. I was about to say exponentially deteriorating, but I wouldn't say it's that bad. He got dropped by an old Poirier who still got very slick boxing. He was still crafting his way to, a close fight against Max in the third fight. Obviously took Max to decision. I do believe Max could have finished him in the first, but nonetheless, Poirier did drop him in the second. Then after that, his fight with Charles, he did get rocked on the feet when he tried to point down, but it wasn't like a rock. Oh my God, he's wobbled. He took a misstep and then started to trade more with him, and then he got the best of Charles in that last shot, and it wasn't going to put him out because Charles was far away and he was backing up and throwing teeps when they were throwing down. I love Charles, but that's not what the point down's for. You don't start your Muay Thai and your conventional sparring when Max Holloway says to point down and you agree to it. So, anyways, yeah, Max Holloway, he has a very good chin. All time, he would have an S tier chin, but right now I'd say it's still a very good chin. I'd say A tier. We move on to the next one. This one is going to be in the C tier. So, this guy's, he's got a questionable chin. He gets dropped. Another guy with really good recovery time. But, this guy's got better recovery time than Oliveira, who's also in the C tier. Alexander Volkanovski, he's 37 years old, pushing 40, he's still crafting his way to these victories against guys that are very dangerous like Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez, he is very dangerous. Diego Lopez has mustard in the hands. He's got this unorthodox boxing style where he kind of just moves his head around everywhere. No, doesn't move his head at all. He's a blockhead. What am I talking about? But he kind of just like moves his shoulders with the strikes, and he's very rigid with his boxing. But it is still very powerful and it's very slick. He's dropped Volk once in both fights. But the thing about it was in the first fight, when he dropped Volk in the first fight, I thought Volk was nearly being finished, and then the bell sounded. Volk was saved by the bell there. So, in the second fight, I was worried for Volk and, his ability to not be chinned. And, he got dropped in the third round by a little check hook that Diego Lopez put out there. And it was basically just like this. Like, it was like nothing at all. It was just like this little, It was not a very hard shot from Diego Lopez, and it put Volk down for a second. But the thing is, he recovered so fast and bounced right back up to his feet. So that's why he's not, a lower tier. I obviously wasn't going to put Volk in the D tier for chins, obviously, because he took shots in the chin from Diego Lopez in the first fight and didn't get knocked out. Even though he did take that one good, like 2 overhand. I don't even know what Diego Lopez has such unorthodox boxing. But, Diego Lopez threw something down the middle that knocked Volk on the temple and nearly got him finished. But, yeah, that's my ranking for Volk. We'll move on to a guy that I put in the D tier. This guy is an absolutely cooked chin. He's fighting this weekend. Benny Dariush. I'm so scared for Dariush against Quillen Salkild. Obviously Quillen Salkild is our boy too. We are making a belt run. We are the GOAT Aussie striker. But yeah, I mean, I like Dariush too. But the thing about him is, just look at his last 5 fights here. Obviously the fluke win over Gamrot. Then we got knockout loss to Oliveira. Knockout loss to Arman, and Arman just chinned him immediately. Look at that. It's in a minute 4 seconds. We obviously watched the fight. It was something down the middle from Arman, and then it just sent Beneil Dariush flying back. He got knocked down by Moicano in this fight. Benoit Saint Denis, He obviously it was just like he had Benoit Saint-Denis, he had him rocked to the leg. He had a leg kick knockdown, and then Benoit Saint-Denis just got up and then just went like this to Dariush's chin, and then he went out absolutely cold in 16 seconds here. So, obviously Dariush has a pretty bad chin. I'm worried that a gust of wind in the arena might knock out Dariush on the walkout. So I think that might be his biggest opponent compared to Quillen Salkeld. Yeah, I'm scared for him because obviously Quillen Salkeld, he's the guardian of Pakistan. He's knocked out a guy from Israel. He's going to knock out a guy from Iran. That's Beneil Dariush. He's knocked out an Indian. He is the guardian of Pakistan, and I'm sure all Pakistanis will be rooting for Quillen Salkeld here, and so will I, because I love Quillen Salkeld. But we love Beneil Dariush too. We will be making a belt run at the age of 80 here. He's already got gray hair. I'm worried for him. I do think that his MMA career might be taking years off his life with how bad his chin is. He's been getting knocked out by everybody. I think you put my grandma in there. I think she might have a good time with Beneil Dariush. I think she might put the mustard on Beneil Dariush and get that knockout in 16 seconds like Benoit Saint-Denis. But anyways, Beneil Dariush, he's got to hang it up if he gets knocked out by Quillen Salkeld. I don't want to see Dariush get chinned anymore. But anyways, I think him and Johnny Walker are actually pretty on par for how bad their chins are. We move on to the next one. This is gonna be another S tier. This guy has a granite chin. You look at his fights. Diego Lopez is he's a marauder. People forget, man. Diego Lopez. Never mind. I ain't gonna do all that. I hate doing the Rogan voice. It just gives me PTSD to every numbered event you have to hear. This stupid bald fucker Joe Rogan's commentary. Actually, he's not stupid. He's very smart. But he's stupid in MMA terms. He plays dumb it's almost like he plays dumb as an MMA fan. He tries to cater to the casuals that watch the sport. But yeah, it gets annoying. But anyways, off of the Rogan tangent. Diego Lopez, he has a granite chin. Took a lot of shots in the chin from Gene Silva, who's obviously got very good power. He nearly finished Gene Silva in round 1, but then in round 2, Gene Silva kept hitting him with this front kick up the middle. That looked really scary to Diego Lopez's chin. I thought once Gene Silva kept getting that front kick going and his spinning attacks going, I thought he was entering a flow state where he was going to finish Lopez. But that somehow, this blockhead right here, Diego Lopez barely moves his head, by the way. He's got to work on that if he wants to live a longer life. But, obviously Diego Lopez, he was getting rocked a little. Like he got wobbled twice in the first fight against Volk and once in the second fight against Volk. But I think a lot of that was just, caught him off balance. He did actually get wobbled in the first fight once against Volk. But, he's mainly just been caught off balance, never been knocked down, never been, oh my gosh, Diego Lopez is going to get finished here. But, Diego Lopez, he has a very good granite chin. Steve Garcia, he's fighting Steve Garcia at the White House, and Steve Garcia's got that power in his hands. Steve Garcia has a good chin as well. That's going to be a really interesting matchup because these are both two blockheads who have good power in their hands. And I think it's a lot of a closer fight than people think. Steve the Mean Machine Garcia, man. People forget, man. Steve the Mean Machine Garcia is a marauder. That's my last Joe Rogan impression, by the way. Stuttering machine we are today, huh? Anyways, yeah, that's my ranking for Diego Lopez. We move on to the next one. This will be in the A tier. This guy had a very good showing of chin in his last fight against Justin Rufus Gaethje, and that's Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett, in the words of Arman Sarukian, he has chin and then he has nothing else. He has a chin. I guess he does have something else. He has good grappling. He's dangerous on the ground. Not very good takedown entries, though. He wasn't able to take down the 37-year-old man, Justin Rufus Gaethje. But Justin Gaethje does have really good takedown defense. But Justin Rufus Gaethje did take him down 3 times. People forget, man. Justin Rufus Gaethje was a Division I wrestler. I said the last slide was going to be my last Joe Rogan impression, and it wasn't. Sorry, guys. Anyways, Paddy Pimblett here. It's a very good chin. He was tanking shots straight on the chin from Justin Gaethje. I think that's going to probably shorten his lifespan, but hopefully not. Hopefully Paddy's going to be okay in the rest of his life. But, you can't really, it's hard to take shots on the chin like that and still be conscious when you got a man like Justin Gaethje in front of you, who's an absolute brawler and has one of the best pound-for-pound power still in the UFC at the age of 37. So, that's impressive in its own right. He was taking good shots on the chin from Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's got pretty good power at lightweight. I know he's small, but he's like a squirrel. He's like Michael Chandler. He fights like a testosterone chipmunk almost. It's just like I don't know how that has any correlation, but he's very burly and short. And he's gonna kind of make these sprinty, explosive movements at you, and he's gonna try to chin you. And a lot of the shots are gonna hurt. And Paddy took those shots in 2 rounds. 2.5 rounds of fighting with Chandler. He took those shots. He took a really good, I think, a 2 on the chin from Chandler. And he kind of taunted him after, and it didn't affect him at all. And he's taking good shots on the chin. I think he took a few good shots from Tony Ferguson, but that Tony Ferguson is a shell of himself. I guess Jared Gordon was kind of putting it on him, and he was taking it. So this Scouser don't get knocked out. Obviously, his boy Curtis Campbell got knocked out at UFC London, but this Scouser don't get knocked out. We'll move on to the next one. This is going to be in the B tier. Sean Strickland. A lot of people would say this guy has a better chin than this. I think he's very high B tier chin, but however, the reason that people say he has such a good chin is because he doesn't get hit that much. That's why. It'll look like he gets hit, but he doesn't because he just rolls with everything so well, and he blocks everything. He's got kind of the shell style where he's able to block right here, block here, shoulder roll with everything. Yeah, Sean Strickland, he has a really good boxing defense. I think Adesanya only hit him 16% of the time. It was something like that. We know that was prime Izzy, by the way. And, Izzy is very precise on the feet, especially back then. Even now, Izzy is a very precise sniper of a puncher. He's obviously past his best days mentally and physically. However, we're talking about Strickland right now. And, Strickland, he was able to withstand a brawl with DDP in the first fight. In the second fight, he had his nose broken, but he was able to dog out that one. Really the only guy that's put him out cold besides there was some guy who put him out in I think his 3rd or 4th fight in the UFC. But other than that, the only guy who's put him out is Alex Pereira. We've seen Strickland get a little bit wobbled. There was a moment that I was scared for him against Anthony Hernandez because Anthony Hernandez kind of landed something wide, and then he kind of took a weird step. Strickland, he's got a pretty good chin, but I'd say it's mostly average and it's overrated due to his striking defense. But I'd still say high B tier. He has a better chin than Justin Rufus Gaethje. I'd say he has a better chin than Curtis Blades. But yeah, that's what I think about Sean Strickland. We move on to the next one. This will be in the C tier. Adesanya. Adesanya, he used to have a granite chin. Adesanya used to go to these wars, and, Adesanya, he would usually come out on top, and he'd withstand a lot of damage. He had that war with the big, mighty Kelvin Gastelum. People forget, man. Oh, my, I can't do it. I almost caught myself again with Kevin Gastelum was a marauder. Fucking hell, man. Anyways, yeah. Izzy, he seems to not react after he gets hit with a big shot on the chin. For example, in the fight against Joe Pyfer, he seemed to be rolling with the shots, he seemed to be taking them, and then he got hit with the big not an overhand, but it was a two down the middle from Joe Pyfer. He got hit with the right hand, and then it seemed like he wasn't reacting. But then he stopped he stopped making all offensive moves. He just started backing up. He didn't seem to be wobbled. No expressions on his face looked like he was stunned. But he was just backing up, and pretty much after he got touched on the chin by Joe Pyfer, he started moving in this very submissive way. So yeah, I mean, Adesanya, he's just like, his best days on the chin are obviously way behind him. His best days in every aspect of fighting are way behind him at that. But yeah, I mean, his chin is, like, I'm worried for him when he fights, obviously. Like, he got sparked out cold by Amavov, and I know Amavov has pop and precision. However, Amavov doesn't really have the power that should be putting you out cold. So, and I know, obviously, Izzy wasn't palms up out cold or anything, but he was badly hurt, and, he got finished. He got finished fair and square by Amavov. He got rocked by DDP and then finished by him on the ground. Obviously dropped by Strickland. Obviously could have been knocked out by Pereira, but Mark Goddard stopped it early. I mean, yeah, and obviously no shame in your game from getting wobbled or almost knocked out by Pereira. Obviously Pereira has one of the craziest powers in the UFC also in the striking. But yeah, I mean, that's where I think Adesanya's chin is in this day of age. In the olden days, Adesanya had an S tier, maybe high A tier chin. But anyways, we'll move on to the next one. This is going to be in the A tier, so I think this is obviously a better chin. Colby Covington. Colby Covington, he's obviously very tough. He's got good cardio. He's able to dog out a lot of fights, a lot of wars that he's been in the past. He survived being pretty much knocked out in the feet by Usman. And I know this was a relatively long time ago. 268 I think was 4 years ago now, something like that. I don't know, but Colby, he's been able to withstand many wars. President pass. His last fight against Joaquin Buckley, he didn't get chinned. Obviously, he was getting beat up by Joaquin Buckley. They had to call it a doctor stoppage. However, he was dogging out the fight. Every shot, he tanked all these shots from Joaquin Buckley, who's, despite being 5'8", or however tall Joaquin Buckley is, despite Joaquin Buckley being 3 apples tall, Joaquin Buckley, he's a big welterweight. He's very, very strong. He's got a great physique. He's got a 76-inch reach, which is very, very, very big for a 5'8" man to have a 76-inch reach. I mean, yeah, he's been able to withstand a lot of wars. A lot of shots on the chin that he's taken. Pause. Yeah, I mean, Colby Covington, I don't have much else to say about him. He's got a good chin. He's still got a good chin. He hasn't, and it hasn't really regressed either. So I hope Colby Covington comes back. We need his personality still in the UFC. Hopefully on a pay-per-view or main event of a California fight night, something like that. But anyways, we move on to the next one. This one we will have to put in the D tier. And we got Dominic Reyes. His recent dance partner, Johnny Walker, ain't much far off from him. But, they're both in the D tier. There's a reason that they fought each other, because they're both, very chin-or-be-chin fighters. That fight was supposed to be a banger. And, they both ended up going out there very cautious, taking a smarter approach, pretty much, because both of these guys, they love to get they don't love to get chinned, but they get chinned a lot. Dominic Reyes, he went on, I think, a 3 or 4 fight chin streak after losing the fight to John Jones. We all know that that was a 3-2 or 4-1 win from Dominic Reyes. Jones's only loss, that is actually Jones's only loss is Dominic Reyes, even though it didn't count. So anyways, getting off of that, he got chinned by Yuri, got chinned by, I think, Jan Blachowicz, Ryan Spann, which is a really bad look. I think he got chinned by Volkan Oezdemir too, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, that might have been Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker got chinned by Volkan Oezdemir. But yeah, and then after that, He went on the 3-fight resurgence, then got chinned by Olberg. And there's no shame in getting chinned by Olberg, I guess. But all these guys, they added up damage to Dominic Reyes. And when you look back at the Olberg performance, it's like, dude, Dominic Reyes, what the fuck are you doing? He just walked right into that, right into the left hook from Olberg. I mean, come on, bro. What the fuck are we doing? It was like the most pathetic performance from Dominic Reyes. But anyways, Dominic Reyes, he's a chin or be chinned kind of fighter, except for the last one. He did actually wobble Johnny Walker with like the only clean shot on the chin that he landed. He did wobble him, and Walker caught himself on the cage, which goes to show how bad Johnny Walker's chin is. I mean, come on. But anyways, yeah, that's where I think Dominic Reyes stacks up. Watch out for the gusts of wind. Watch out for the fans throwing hats or anything that falls from the stands. Watch out for beer cans because Dominic Reyes might get chinned. Anyways, we move on. This guy, not this guy, but this guy we will be putting in the A tier. Merab. Merab has a very, very underrated chin, and Merab is just very tough. Like a lot of these guys right here are like a combination of cardio, except for Patty. A combination of cardio and toughness. That seems to be the best base for MMA, for dogging out long 5-round fights or 5-round wars, is cardio and toughness, and no better representation here than Merab. Merab has really obviously the best cardio in the UFC. He's still able to shoot 60 takedowns in a fight and still keep going and still keep up the high pace. And keep upping the ante as the fight keeps going. Merab, he's obviously putting an insane pace on opponents. And the other thing about Merab is he's got a very, very good chin. He's able to take shots in the chin, pause from O'Malley. He's able to take a beating from Jan. He's able to take shots on the chin from Umar, who's not got very good power. But at the same time, he's taking these clean shots on the chin from high-level UFC fighters. And he's able to dog out a lot of fights where he's almost finished. He was almost finished against Marlon Moraes, and then he ended up getting the TKO finish there. Merab is very tough. He overcomes adversity in fights, regardless of whether or not he's dominating at one point or not. I think Merab has a very underrated chin. He's in the A tier with the rest of these guys, even though he's not as good of a striker as these two right here. I was about to say the rest of these guys, and then I realized we have Colby Covington and Patty in the rankings as well. But anyways, we move on to the next one, and the next one is going to be in the B tier. And we got Bully B, Bilal Muhammad right here. Forget the name. I'm kidding. Remember the name. He's the king of Chi-Town, baby. You gotta have a pass to come into Chi-Town on Bilal's watch. So with Bilal here, Bilal does have a very underrated chin. He was able to take a lot from JDM, a lot of pressure. Knees up the middle. Really, really good boxing in the pocket from JDM. And I know JDM doesn't have the best power in the world, but JDM's obviously still able to knock out guys that are a little chinnier, like Gilbert Burns and Randy Brown. JDM's obviously still got enough power to potentially chin you. Like, you have to be careful against a guy like JDM. And Bilal was hurting JDM a little bit on the feet. Obviously not wobbling him, but he was damaging JDM's face. Bilal held his own with JDM on the feet, and he was taking really good shots on the chin. Pause again, and into the fifth round. He was taking the best of the beating from Jack Della Maddalena. And, he was able to withstand it. He was able to finish the fight, and he was taking a lot from him in the earlier rounds. So I think Bilal's chin is very good, not just based on that fight, but he's dogged out previous fights where he's got touched on the chin a little bit. But mostly in his fights he does kind of just dominate. He does kind of just cruise to a decision. Take a guy down. Except for the fight with Ian Gary, where he was the one on the wrong side of the decision, getting dominated. Not dominated necessarily, but controlled. yeah, that's where I think Bilal's chin stacks up. He's not really that proven in chin yet, besides when he fought JDM. But anyways, we move on to the next one. This next ranking will be in the S tier. And, this guy just can't be finished at all. It's me, Marvin Vittori. Oh my gosh, this guy right here, he's just an absolute tank of a dude. Marvin Vittori, ladies and gentlemen. He's not a good fighter, but his chin is absolutely granite. He literally can't be hurt. I don't know what this guy's made out of, but he can't be hurt. Oh my fucking god, I'm taking more shots on the chin. Yeah, Marvin Vittori has a really good chin. Granite chin at that. It can't be knocked down. He's been in not so much wars, but fights with high level guys who should be able to chin him, and they're not. There's something about Marvin Vittori where he's just impossible to chin. He's not a very good fighter, and he gets beat by these guys, but no matter what shot you hit him with, he's gonna eat it for some weird reason. He's just gonna eat it, and if he's just such a funny prototype of a fighter. Just not champ material at all, but I think he's challenged for the belt twice in the Adesanya era. And he's just got such a crazy chin. It's so insane. And there's so many memes you can make out of this guy, and it's so funny. I don't know why this guy's not more memed than he already is. But anyways, that's my ranking for Marvin Vittori. It's almost funny how he can't be chinned. He's obviously high S tier because this guy's literally made out of this guy's made out of, like, I don't even know what he's made out of. Somebody's got to do a background check on this guy. See where it came from. Anyways, we're gonna move on. We're gonna go to the C tier. Bryce Mitchell, ladies and gentlemen. I'm worried when he fights. Because I know, like, the guys he's got chinned by is Josh Emmett. Obviously, Josh Emmett's got that big, meaty overhand. Josh Emmett's obviously got the one-hitter quitter in his hands if he connects. And Bryce Mitchell obviously isn't defensively sound on the feet with his striking defense. And then, Bryce Mitchell got dropped like 3 times by Ilya. But, other than that, it's just like, the other guys that he's getting dropped by and outperformed on the feet by is just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, Said Nurmagomedov's gonna drop you with a knee up the middle. Come on. It just scares me about Bryce's striking. Whenever he fights, it's just like his striking is just so I guess he's gonna be light on the feet and throw these kicks. But once you get into boxing range or Muay Thai, or like clinch range, Bryce is in a lot of fucking trouble, bro. Like Bryce needs to, if Bryce doesn't get the body lock early, he's gonna have some trouble on the feet. And yeah, in all of his fights, he honestly has trouble on the feet. So I'm worried with Bryce Mitchell on the feet, but obviously Bryce Mitchell's got great grappling. Probably one of the best one of the best American grapplers in the UFC right now. And a lot of people aren't ready to have that conversation. But this is not a grappling video. This is a chins video. And Bryce Mitchell doesn't have that good of a chin. I'm kind of worried for him when he fights Victor Henry. Unless he gets the body lock and just takes him down and blobs him or subs him. Anyways, we move on. Our next fighter will be in the B tier. Kind of a mid-chin, an overrated chin at that. We got Islam Makhachev. And, the only reason that he doesn't get hit on the chin more is because of his striking defense. Makhachev has really good striking defense and really underrated striking defense. So, when he does get hit on the chin by some guys, he does get stunned a little bit. Like, he got stunned and hurt on the feet by Poirier. I'd still say he's a high B tier of a chin, just because he was enduring the shots from Poirier, and Poirier was landing clean on him. However, when a lighter Volk stumbles you, like, I think Volk stumbled him twice. They did exchange in the pocket in the first round, and Makhachev probably got the better of that exchange. But other than that, Volk obviously dropped him in the 5th and then stumbled him a few times. He was hurting him on the chin. Sometimes I get worried for... I don't really get worried for Islam on the feet just because I know he's going to get a hold of the guy and take him down. But, he doesn't have a questionable chin, but I would worry for him against a guy like Ilia Topuria, even up a weight class, because he hasn't really faced a guy with that type of precision, with that type of oh, you better not let him land on the chin. He's faced Charles Oliveira, but at the same time, that's a Charles Oliveira with slightly worse striking, and a Charles Oliveira that really doesn't have the boxing and the precision at that to land on the chin and put you out. And especially in a guy like Islam Makhachev, who has really good striking defense. We've seen Ilia take down the likes of Max Holloway, who's obviously very sound on the feet. We've seen Ilia knock out a prime Volkanovski in round 2 after going around with him. So that just goes to show how good Ilia is. And yeah. Anyways, we're talking about Islam here. And yeah, Islam, he has a decent chin. I'd be interested to see it get tested against a guy like Ilia. But anyways, we'll move on to the next one, and it's Yuri Prohaska, and we're gonna put him in the C tier. Now, I don't like to. He just got like this on the chin by. I don't want to put him in the D tier because he's able to withstand more adversity and obviously take more punches on the chin from guys like Jamal Hill, from guys like Khalil Roundtree, than Johnny Walker, Beneil Dariush, and Dominic Reyes are. It would be really disrespectful of me to put Yuri in the D tier. However, Yuri does have a very questionable chin, and I'd say low C tier, because anybody with a left hook. Anybody with a left hook that like turns over their left hook, like Pereira, like Olberg, I'm very, very scared for Yuri against a guy like that. Because, Yuri obviously he fights with his hands down and he leaves his chin out there, and he moves his head around, and his whole game plan is basically just to confuse the guy, overwhelm the guy with how unorthodox he is. However, there's a cost that comes with that, and that is being so sloppy that you leave your chin out there and just run into things that you don't mean to run into, like a left hook from Olberg, like a left hook from Pereira, like a question mark kick from Pereira, So this guy, he's obviously been knocked out by the likes of Pereira and Olberg, who are very, very sound on the feet, very sharp, have the power, have the one-hitter quitter. But yeah, I'm still very worried for him against anybody in his division with the power to put him out. With the left hook, not necessarily a Roundtree who kind of slaps his punches out there and is mainly a Muay Thai based guy who will try to chop the leg. Yuri can dog it out against a guy like that. Yuri can dog it out against a guy like Jan, who's very technical. But I'm worried for him against a guy like Olberg if they fight again. I was worried for him against Pereira, and look what happened. So, Yuri's not very chinny, but I'm questionable. He has a questionable chin. I'll be worried for his chin going forward. I wasn't before the Olberg fight, and now I am. So, anyways, we'll move on. The last guy that we're going to put on the list is in the A tier. The only reason I'm not putting him S tier is because he hasn't proven enough yet, and he hasn't been hit enough yet to show that he's an S tier chin. However, his chin is the most underrated part of his game. Ilia Topuria. I've talked about him a lot in the video already, even though we haven't brought him into the rankings until now. But I mean, yeah, he's been able to take good shots in the chin from Holloway. Holloway did some damage on his face through 3 rounds, and Ilia was eating all the shots. Ilia was eating some shots from Josh Emmett. He ate a big head kick from Jai Herbert that dropped him, and then he got in immediately on a double leg and finished him minutes later. So, obviously Ilia, he's shown that he has a granite chin, good recovery time. He wasn't really like hit hard on the chin by Volk. Volk was pretty much just jabbing him up at range. He ate some good elbows that were clean from Oliveira. He ate like 2 decent punches from Oliveira, and obviously Oliveira has power. Oliveira kind of made Holloway step back in their fight, as I mentioned earlier in the video. Topuria, he's able to dog out fights. Not just dog out fights, but he's able to walk forward, take shots on the chin, and finish his opponent. He walks forward because he's so confident in his chin, because he's so confident in his boxing, that he just, he chins everybody. you know, and you know he doesn't. The only reason he's not S tier is because he hasn't shown. People don't really hit him on the chin that much. That's why. Like the reason that Diego Lopez is in the S tier is because a lot of people hit Diego Lopez on the chin and he eats it. Not many people hit Ilya, but he hits. He doesn't hit. He does hit. He knocks he knocks people the fuck out and he knocks them out cold. But however, Ilya, he gets hit like very little. And when he gets hit, he eats it. He eats it all the time. So, that's my ranking for Ilya. That's all we got. That's all, that's my ranking. And, yeah, let me know what you guys think of the ranking. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye until the next one.